He was just about to take a bite. A billionaire, one of the richest men in the state, stood in the middle of a busy street food market, holding a warm pretzel he'd bought from a vendor everyone trusted. People walked past him without a second glance. He didn't look like a billionaire today. No bodyguards, no designer suit, just a tired man in a plain jacket. And then it happened. A small, dirt-covered girl, no older than 10, tugged on his sleeve. Her voice was shaky, but urgent, almost frightened. "Don't eat that," she cried. He almost ignored her. Why would he listen to a little beggar? But the look in her eyes, the raw fear, made him pause. And that pause saved his life. Before we get into the full story, make sure you subscribe, like, and comment to support our channel, True Story Tales. Your support helps us bring more inspiring, real-life stories to you every week. Let's dive into this unforgettable journey of kindness, courage, and a moment that changed two lives forever. The billionaire's name was Richard Hale, known everywhere for his wealth, his real estate empire, and his reputation for being cold, distant, and impossible to approach. Richard wasn't rude. He just believed everyone wanted something from him. Over time, he'd learned to keep people at arm's length. On this particular evening, he had slipped out alone. His life had been a whirlwind of meetings, deals, and pressure. Exhausted, he wanted just 1 hour to walk like a regular person, unnoticed. The small street market was warm and full of life. The aroma of baked bread, roasted nuts, and cinnamon filled the air. Richard almost smiled for the first time in days. He found a pretzel stand, handed the old vendor a few dollars, and took his food. But before he could take a single bite, he heard that trembling little voice. "Don't eat that, please." Richard turned and saw her. She was tiny, wrapped in a torn hoodie, her shoes mismatched, hair messy, face smudged with dirt. People walked past her like she didn't exist. But she stood her ground, staring at the pretzel in his hand like it was a ticking bomb. "What are you talking about?" Richard asked, confused. Her hands shook as she pointed. "A man earlier, he put something in one of the pretzels. I saw him. The vendor didn't notice. I tried to tell him, but he yelled at me to go away." Richard frowned. "What did he put in it?" I don't know," she whispered, "but it looked like powder. A normal person would have brushed her off. A billionaire had even more reason to ignore her. But something in her eyes, fear mixed with pure concern, made him stay still. He crouched down to her level. "Why would you warn me?" he asked gently. Because you don't look like a bad man," she said, "and I don't want someone to get hurt." Richard hesitated, glancing around. The vendor was distracted, serving other customers. Nobody else seemed alarmed. "Could you show me where you saw it?" he asked. The girl nodded quickly and led him to the side of the stand. She pointed to a small crate behind the counter. He stood there, she told him. He had a backpack. He took something out when the old man wasn't looking. Richard's instincts sharpened. Even though he had lived with wealth, he grew up poor. He knew what fear looked like, and this child wasn't lying. Something bad had happened. He walked back to the vendor. "Sir," Richard said calmly, "may I ask if anyone tampered with your pretzels?" The vendor scoffed. "Impossible. I've been here 20 years. Everyone loves my pretzels." Richard nodded, but he didn't take a bite. Instead, he gently tore the pretzel open. His eyes narrowed. Inside the soft dough, there were tiny white granules, something that definitely did not belong there. The vendor's face turned pale. "What is that?" the old man whispered. Richard didn't know, but he knew it wasn't safe. He called the police immediately. The vendor was questioned, the pretzels were tested, and the results confirmed Richard's fear. The pretzel contained a dangerous substance that could have seriously harmed someone like him. The vendor nearly collapsed in tears. "I didn't see anything. Dear God." And standing by the corner, trying to stay out of the chaos, was the little girl. Richard approached her as the police handled the situation. "You saved my life," he said quietly. She shook her head fast. "No, I just did what I should do." He noticed how thin she was, how she shivered in the cold evening air. "What's your name?" "Mia," she whispered. "And where are your parents, Mia?" She looked down. Her fist tightened. My mom, she got sick. I used to live with her in our car. After she passed, I didn't have anything. I just stay around here because people sometimes give leftover food. Richard felt something inside him twist. He had spent years building skyscrapers, investments, and empires, and yet he had never once stopped to notice a little girl living on the streets of his own city. He thanked her again and asked, "Did you eat today?" She shook her head without complaint. Richard took her hand gently. "Come with me." He took her to a diner nearby. For the first time in a long time, he didn't care if someone recognized him. He let her choose anything she wanted. She chose a simple bowl of tomato soup and a grilled cheese sandwich. While she ate, he sat across from her, watching the way she tried to be polite, taking small bites as though afraid the food would disappear. "You could have walked away," he said softly. "You could have ignored me." Mia shrugged. "If someone can get hurt, and you can stop it, you should, even if they don't listen." Richard felt the weight of her words. Here she was, a child with nothing, yet she carried more compassion in her heart than most adults he knew. After dinner, he called one of his trusted contacts who ran a children's shelter. He personally drove Mia there. The staff greeted her warmly. They gave her clean clothes, a warm bed, and a place to finally feel safe. Before leaving, Mia tugged at his sleeve again, the same way she had at the market. "Mr. Richard," she whispered, "why were you so kind to me?" He knelt down to her height. "Because you were kind first," she smiled, a small, beautiful smile he knew he'd remember forever. In the days that followed, Richard thought about Mia constantly. Her bravery, her heart, her instinct to protect a stranger when the world had never protected her. He visited her often at the shelter. He brought books, toys, warm clothes, never flashy or overwhelming, just things a child should have. Over time, Mia blossomed into a brighter version of herself. And Richard changed too. He began funding shelter programs, building safe spaces for homeless children, and personally visiting communities he once overlooked. He used his wealth not just to build towers, but to lift lives. Every time someone asked him what inspired this sudden shift, he said, "A little girl who had nothing, but gave everything she could." Months later, Richard attended the shelter's holiday dinner. Mia ran up to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "You came!" She beamed. Of course, he smiled. "I wouldn't miss it." As he looked around at the room filled with laughter, warmth, and hope, Richard realized something powerful. Kindness doesn't always come from the powerful. Sometimes it comes from those with nothing to give except their heart. And that one act can ripple into something much bigger. He almost ate a poisoned pretzel that day. But what he truly consumed was a lesson, a life-changing reminder that kindness can save lives, heal hearts, and rewrite futures. As the night continued, Richard watched Mia laughing among other children, and he silently promised himself he would spend the rest of his life giving back the kindness she showed him. Because kindness, real kindness, always comes full circle.